afternoon, and thanks everyone for joining us for today's webinar, The Journey from Product Cost to Cost to Serve. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things before I turn over to our presenter today. There's a chat box on the right side of the screen. If you have any questions during the presentation, go ahead and submit them there. We're happy to interject during the conversation, so don't hold back on your questions. And if not, we'll get them answered at the end. Also, at the end of the presentation, we will leave time for Q&A, so we'll invite you to come on and ask your questions then as well. We'll do some live Q&A here on the webinar, so looking forward to that. And we will have this recording available after the webinar, so stay tuned for information on how to receive the webinar to share with your friends and other folks who want to learn about product costing and cost to serve. So without further ado, I will turn it over to today's presenter. Great, Adrian.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you very much, and thank you guys on the other side of the line for joining us today for the webinar. We are excited to show you a couple of the things we've been doing, some exciting stuff that we've been doing with our software, some exciting stuff we've been doing as a company and thought leaders in the space of product costing. And so the topic of today's webinar is the journey from product costing to cost to serve, right? So a lot of times when we talk to our clients, we ask, okay, hey, we think we got the product costing right. You know, what are some of the next dimensions? What are the next steps we can take our company's financial visibility, financial transparency to the next level? So we want to show a little bit today about some of the concepts of how does a journey from going from product costing to cost to serve look like, as well as we're going to look at some live examples and hopefully get some good questions and answers at the end. Great. Having said that, my name is Adrian Wachowski. I'm with 3C Software. I have extensive experience in the world of product costing, budgeting, forecasting, and profitability analysis for the last 10 plus years or so. I implemented these kind of solutions, and some of these companies, or most of the companies that you see below, so some big names and small names, what we have found is that the notions and the concepts of costing are very similar. It doesn't really matter what industry they are, what size of company they are, of big or small. So I want to share a little bit with you today some of these concepts in what we call this journey from product costing to cost to serve profitability. To start off, I want to share a little concept with you guys that I want you guys to keep in mind throughout this presentation. So I had an interesting conversation with my wife the other night, and she said, hey, it would be great if we lose some weight. So, of course, I couldn't tell her that because she's 9 months pregnant right now, right? But she's like, hey, it would be great. I said, hey, I want to lose some weight. I said, okay, losing weight sounds good, right? So losing weight, let's just assume, I said, okay, I'm going to lose 15 pounds in 3 months. Okay, that sounds great. So what if after 3 months I step on the scale and say, hey, it really wasn't meant to be. I still like Chick-fil-A. I still like a burger from time to time. I really didn't exercise. But I look back, and all I can say is I can reflect back and say, well, I didn't make it. I didn't do so well the last 3 months, right? That's one behavior. Now, what if I would say, okay, I need to lose 5 pounds each month for the next 3 months, right? That's a little bit of a different behavior, meaning what I'm doing now, I'm setting smaller goals that are much more measurable, right? So the concept of what you can measure, we can control, and what we can measure, we can also hold people accountable for. So after each month, if I would step on the scale and say, okay, did I lose 5 pounds, yes or nay, I would have a little bit more of a reaction or a path to correct and give me much more opportunity and chance to correct the path to lose 15 pounds in 3 months, right? Everybody would agree with that. Now, what I really need to be doing is, in order to lose 15 pounds in 3 months, I need to have some drive and some concrete concrete ways of measuring it and concrete ways of doing, of actions to take in order to reach my goal, right? Balancing calories in, calories out, increasing my targets for exercising, right? And maintaining my body composition, right? Maybe from time to time get up when I sit in my chair at work, right? These are all these things that are actions that I can hold myself accountable for. So I really want you to keep in mind, you guys get the concept, right? Being able to measure things not just in a reactive way after things have already occurred, but in a continuous path is very, very important. And I want you to keep this in mind once we talk about some of these concepts. So to facilitate the change, you have to accurately and regularly measure all of these factors, right? And it's kind of the same way if you think about it with your financials. Okay, back to the topic of this webinar, the journey from product cost to cost of service. So what does it really mean, right? What does it mean when we talk about product cost? So this is a very simplistic and holistic view of what I call the journey from product cost to cost of serve, right? So when we look here on the left side, we see the product cost is really the supply cost, manufacturing cost, overhead costs, our BOMs, our routings, our yield, our cost allocations, everything that comes up, where we can calculate with a certain set of volume and mix a dollar per SKU, so to say, right? That makes sense, makes very much sense. A lot of our people that are in this webinar today probably doing this with SAP, and it's fine, right? Now there's also this concept of once I have my product cost, I have this notion called post-production cost, right? And it might be some warehousing costs, some further packaging, second packaging, some handling and transport, maybe some intralogistic freight or transportation that I have to handle, but it's still part of all, which brings us to this third bullet point of this total delivered cost, right? To come up, okay, what does it really cost me to deliver this cost? And then we could look at the fourth point, this cost to serve. The concept of cost to serve is not a new one, right? It's been around for a long, long time. However, depending on the industry, people like to focus on, they say, okay, if I'm in a manufacturing environment, my main concern about cost is in my cost of goods sold portion, right? Well, people don't realize all the time that there's also a lot of potential of breaking down my SG&A cost to what does it really cost me to serve each of my customers, right? And that means this cost to serve concept is selling and marketing costs, special handling of freight, changeover costs, right? Should we take really those low volume orders? Should we take them on or should we not take them on, right? Some special quality requirements. So it gets very, very nitty and very detailed when we talk about specific costs to serve specific customers. And then, of course, at the end of the day, all we want to do is bring it all together and come up with a view that shows our total profitability, so our gross margin, contribution margin, net margin, and really an end-to-end economic profit. So I'm going to talk about this later as well a little bit, right? Makes perfect sense, right? So now the question is, okay, what are some of the requirements, or as I call them, journey lifesavers throughout this journey that we need, right? First of all, everybody would agree that we need data. We need the right data, right? So what happens a lot of times in organizations, what we've seen is different sets of data sitting in different data silos, different systems, and they all need to come together at one specific time, at the right time, to make the right decision. Sounds very conceptually. It is very conceptually, but at the end of the day, that's what has to happen, right? We need to bring everything to the right place, apply our business logic and business rules in order to make the right decisions. What we also want to do throughout this journey is we want to gain some forward-looking insights to be more proactive than being reactive. This kind of goes back to the scaling example, the weight scale example, right? if I look after 3 months, if I look at my P&L, so I really didn't do so much better than last quarter. That's a different behavior than if I would look at it every week, every month, right? Sometimes I've seen customers say that they want to look at it maybe every other day. So driving this behavior is very, very important. So what I want to do now for just a couple of minutes, I want to focus on the topics of decision making and what kind of decision making areas do we have or do we see normally in organizations. So decisions are usually made in 4 business information categories, what we call it. One of them being opportunities or threats. I mean, okay, maybe I am in a situation where I have an potential opportunity, and I need the right information to make a decision about a new opportunity, or I want to avoid a threat, right? Very simple example is the concept of quoting and estimating new business. Okay, do I take it on at a certain price? Yes or no. Another form of business information category is competitive positioning. Okay, maybe I have some competitors that have a cost advantage, but maybe not a cultural advantage, or maybe not a brand advantage, right? I'm going to show some examples in just a second there. So I want to make a strategic decision to gain some competitive positioning, right? I also want to make some decisions based on changing environments. As we know, most industries nowadays are very fast paced. I mean, just take the concept of raw material price changes. It changes every day. So how do we adapt to these vulnerable variables in our external world of business? And how do we then come up with better decision making where we can say, okay, is this going to be valuable to us or not? And of course, we're always out, what we see organizations always out to improve themselves. So getting into this continuous improvement cycle, say, hey, does it make sense to improve our costs? Does it make sense to increase our prices? I mean, these are all these decisions that you will make. But I think these 4 categories really sum up in a great way what type of business decisions organizations do there. Now, as we all know, just having accurate data or information on reports is not enough anymore, right? Just to look at a P&L, no CFO is going to be satisfied saying, yeah, my cost of goods sold figure was up or down 5-6%. That's why we're not as profitable as last month. That's just not good enough anymore. So what we need to do, we need to drill down further and really get to the bottom of this, right? Meaning, what do? We need to identify drivers across what we call the value chain to really calculate and analyze cost data. And when we talk about drivers, a lot of times these drivers are time, transactions, mistakes, specializations, or management, right? So very simplistic drivers, but we really see it throughout the entire financial planning or financial systems that we have, right? When you have drivers, you have driver-based costing, you have driver-based cost planning, you have driver-based, you have certain statistics and line speed that you tie your product cost to. You have drivers in your variance analysis. They're really found everywhere, right? And it's very, very important, these drivers, because numbers don't speak really for themselves anymore. You have to help them and put it into perspective for the people that you want to hold accountable for. An example being, if you go to your engineers on a specific manufacturing line and say, hey, you spent $20,000 more in electricity last month, that's not, they can't do anything with that piece of information, right? But if you would tell them, try to speak, so to say, their language and say, hey, there are 3 products which took us way longer to run last month than the month before. What happened, right? Did we have some problems? Did we have some maintenance issues with the line? This is kind of you can hold people accountable. What they are accountable can be held accountable for, right? For the things that they can control. I think you get the point, right? So aligning these business rules, we talked a little bit about the type of decision making, and now I want to bring this concept about, okay, what are some of the business rules? Every company has its own business rules and needs to find them in order to make the decisions relevant to gain their advantage in the market, so to say, right? So, for example, if you look at companies like Walmart, Aldi, IKEA, they all have a cost advantage. They produce high volume, they have low prices, and they compete on delivering products on the services low cost, so to say, right? Compared to like an Apple or Porsche or Starbucks, they compete on their brand or their superior products, right? They have more. We can be a little bit more expensive because we just have the best product, right? So they make decisions, and they need to have an engine that applies these kind of business rules or business models to their cost and profitability structure as well, in order to make accurate decisions based on this strategy, right? Do I want to be the low-cost leader, or do I want to be the differentiation leader? Okay, so let's spend a couple minutes to talk about data and what tools we see out there, right? Establishing a financial analytics program really needs two things, data and tools. So let's look at data, right? So data, what we see today, I mentioned it earlier, it's really now we find data in a lot of data silos, right? There's ERP systems, there's MES systems, there's data warehouses, BI systems, there's now, even that's one that's missing, visualization systems, right? You name it. But all they do is a lot of times they have transactional data that transact, and they try to make some sense of it and apply some business rules. So what we see nowadays a lot is we have data existing in several silos, and somehow they're trying to bring it together. But the level that it's brought together in their ERP or data warehouses or BI tools is a lot of times not the degree of granularity that they had earlier in most of the times the Excel spreadsheets, in the Access databases, or other tools, right? A lot of times we see also homegrown tools. But really what I want to point out here is, why do companies do this, right? It's a really big dilemma what we see out there. Companies spend millions and millions on ERP systems and getting their transactional data right, bring it to the IT tools, but then when it comes to making business decisions, such as, hey, should we take this quote on? Should we take this new customer on? Should we produce this new product? A lot of times what happens is they do this calculation in Excel, right? They spend millions on this ERP implementation, but then they have a $15 subscription to Excel that helps them make that business decision, right? So that's really a big dilemma that we see out there. And I want to challenge you to ask yourself and your organization, why would you do that, right? Why not have a system, a platform that allows you to combine your transactional data with your analytical decision-making capabilities, right? So data is out there, and of course you also need your tools then what to do with the data, right? Just to have data is not good enough anymore. So you want to have tools to build and maintain models that reflect your real-world situations, that maybe mirror or simulate some of your ERP capabilities, right? You want it to deliver timely results, and you want to put it into apply a logic and put it into perspective. Then you can make, again, better decisions at the right time. Makes sense. So what we'll see a lot is in our work and with our software is that we have these disparate systems such as ERPs, shop floor process control system, other systems, and what we're able to do is, with our software, we bring the calculation relevant data from all these databases or systems or sources through an ETL layer, bring it into a platform, enrich it also with new data that, of course, is nowhere, but it needs to be somewhere. If you want to create a forecast, or if you want to create a simulation, a lot of times there's new data that you want to add, so you also have to add some input functionality. Bring it all together, and then put it into the right place for these business processes that you want to serve, such as your budgeting or your rate building, your allocations, your product costing, your variance analysis. These are all these things that we do on a daily basis in the finance organizations, right? Okay, having said that, so I want to take you guys a little bit on a journey from this product cost to serve with some real-time examples. And again, I want you to keep in mind what I just mentioned a minute ago is the challenge that we've seen in organizations is to connect this transactional data with analytical modeling capabilities, and then also having the flexibility applying your business logic and your business rules in a fast-paced environment so you can make better decisions, right? That's the challenge. I'm not telling you something you don't know, but I want you to keep these challenges in mind and pay attention to how we solve some of these challenges at some of our customers. All right. Having said that, let's look at an interactive demo. This is a live demo, so don't shoot me if something doesn't work, right? So I'm going to open our software Impact ECS, and what you see right now here is Impact ECS is the first screen that I would like to show, and really start from product costing, right? Product costing meaning this is a very simplistic P&L that you see here, a very simplistic product costing view. So this is for one plant, for one specific material, our standard cost, and it's a finished good, right? What we see here is a indented BOM, meaning there is a child-parent relationship. There are certain materials that get consumed by other materials that end up eventually as a finished good, the finished good that is to be sold, right? So we see that also here in the scrap factor, the original quantity, parent quantity, and some of the descriptions we have, right? Now, before I get into some of the costing details, I want to just briefly scratch the surface on, okay, how do we get this data inside of our software? All right, so we have a certified interface with most of the ERP systems. Some of them being, we have a certified bidirectional interface with SAP. So we get the data, we can get data from SAP, and we can write data also back to SAP. It's the same for Oracle, it's the same for Infor, it's the same for JD Edwards, you name it, right? So what we see here is an example of actually a SAP customer of ours. So we see we have some materials that get consumed by other materials. And if we look on the right side over here, we see some unit costs, and we see some of these, what we call cost bucket. In the SAP language would be the SAP cost components. They can be the same. They don't have to be the same. We also have customers that for regulatory reasons, they want to see, okay, I want to see a GAAP compliant cost component view, as well as IFRS compliant cost component view, right? These are all these things. Usually we get the data that is in SAP, we replicate it, but you can also rearrange it any way you want to. You can have as many cost components, so to say, as you want to, right? We also have the ability to handle currencies, which is pretty powerful. Okay, so let's pay attention. So we know the material 1000 consists of the material 1002, which really consists of the material 1003. So if I just take a minute here and say, hey, I really want to look at the material 1002, I can simply double click in here, and now I have my material 1002 that is consisting of material 1003 and all the subcomponents, right? Makes sense, so very nicely, very nice functionality to drill down. But I also want you to pay attention to these indented bombs, and when you scroll, if we scroll to the right, what we see here is, unlike an SAP, we are inheriting the natural costs that occurred in the step before. Meaning, we do not pass over material, we do not pass over the material cost as in the material bucket. We still keep them broken out into labor or utilities, fringes, depreciation, you name it. We carry this with us to come up with a whole, with a much better and granular way. So we're not inheriting just material costs, because that's going to help us later on to analyze where this variances come from when we look at, for example, actual standard variances. Right? So very, very powerful to inherit this child-parent relationship in terms of cost components. Another concept I want to highlight here is these routes. So these routings are pretty standard SAP. What's very nice here in our software, we can just simply click on one and then drill down into these work centers or cost centers where we define our spending and calculate our rates, right? You see here it's rates. I mean, it's as flexible. I can make a simplistic change here. We say 200,000, and what I can simply do is recalculate, and it will show up it would change my rate and reflect accordingly inside of my product cost, right? So very powerful engine to simulate. I can save it as a new version. I don't have to make any changes in SAP yet, right? And this is just a summary view where we can see, hey, how much of this came from our routing steps, how much of this came from our bill of materials itself, right? So this is a very simplistic example of a product cost, but I think very representable of some of the things that we are comprehensively delivering to our SAP and other customers. Now, another thing I wanted to show you guys is also, obviously, once you calculate your product cost in your ERP system, you always do this with an assumption of a certain volume, right? And what happens a lot of times is, you're down this budget trail, and it happens, our volumes have changed, so now we've got to recalculate, right? So what we have done, we have created a little bit of a simulation engine here that gives you views like this, where we can see, hey, we have a volume scenario 1, 2, 3, and 4, as you see here at the bottom, and then we automatically recalculate, so you can see, okay, what is the impact of increasing or decreasing volume and mix scenarios on my fixed cost absorption. What's it going to do to my transformation cost? What is it going to do to my overall cost? Right. So this is a nice visualization of, hey, if I increase the volume of product so and so, what would this do to my product cost? Right. So very simplistic, but I think very powerful. As you guys know, you guys get to ask the question all the time. What if? Right. So handling certain volume sets is definitely a great functionality. Now, another concept I want to show you guys is the ability not only to change volume sets, but also maybe different raw material price versions. Right. So if we look at this other model, as we call them, a cost walk, right? What we see here on the top, make this just a little bit bigger, is we have a certain volume set for one finished good. And what I built here is a simulation engine where I can say, okay, I have my BOM 1 I have my BOM version 1, my BOM version 2, BOM version 3. This can be my standard, my forecasted, my actual, right? But it's just the BOM structure, okay? Let's just say I'm going to leave them all the same. and now I have my raw material price versions. So I can have 1, 2, 3 versions of my raw material prices. I can simply select them here, right? And then at some point, I want to define, hey, the combination of my BOM version 1 and my raw material price version 1 are going to make up my standard cost inside of SAP. Well, what I did here is, this is for one finished good, and what I clearly see here, and let's zoom in for just a second, I see, hey, with my BOM quantity 1, at my raw material price 1, this is my BOM cost. Now, when I went to BOM version 2, with raw material price version 2, these are my BOM costs, right? So it's really a cost walk from version to version, from standard to actual, and then eliminating my volume, mix, or price variances. So if I go into the next tab, BOM compare, I see exactly, hey, nothing has changed when I went from BOM version 1 to BOM version 2 in terms of my structure or my quantities that I used in the bill of material, but I had some price changes, right? And here's my price changes. That's here. Now let's take it a step further and let's apply the volume that we defined up here for this finished good material. So if we look at one volume, I know exactly, hey, when I went from standard to actual, I had my raw material price variances, and the price variances came out to be a 1.8 million variance, right? So pretty powerful. Everything's automatically calculated, but it gives you the chance not to spend time on copy pasting, getting the data together. All data is there. You can simply analyze it and tell your CFO, hey, this is what happened, right? Okay, so this is really the concept of product cost, just a couple of examples. I want to build a bridge now to the concept of the total deliver cost or cost of service we spoke earlier about, right? I'm just going to close some of these. So let's look at an example here. Another model, we call this the 7-Eleven model. I have one customer, 7-Eleven Boston, for a certain period. And what I did here on the top of the screen, I really created a dynamic P&L, entire P&L for that period, for that customer, right? Meaning here's my revenues, here's some of my direct costs, here's my gross margin. And once you pay attention to this area of the P&L, meaning really below the gross margin is what we talked about, are these cost to serve concepts, right? What it really cost me to perform customer service for this specific customer during this period, right? What about special deliveries, negotiation, order entry, special packaging, picking, receiving, returns, etc. Right? That's what really brings up those net margins. So it's really, if you think about it, is your SG&A cost, but broken down, allocated specifically to a customer based on a certain set of drivers. So at the end of the day, we also see a lot, we want to apply some AR carrying costs or inventory carrying costs. Right? These are all coming to calculate what we call an end-to-end economic profit. Right? So this is a fairly simplistic P&L, but how do we do this when we talk about drivers? Is some of the drivers that you see down here is certain customer attributes, right? Here's my AR balances 30, 60 days. Check balance being used. What is the distances between the deliveries I had, right? I mean, all these drivers then come up with these, what did it really cost me to serve the customer, right? So once I have that, what I can see here, for this specific customer, I had a certain amount of orders during the month, and what is my economic profit, right? So let's open this up a little bit. So if I look in this area, I see very clearly that under this order group, I had certain orders that I made money with, and certain orders that I lost some money, right? At the end, I was still fine, but I surely want to analyze what happened there. Right, so what I can do here with our software, I can simply, and by the way, these are actual orders, these are actual monthly orders. I can drill down into this one and see, okay, it was actually the product of a speed stick. Here's the entire P&L of the speed stick. Here's the entire cost to serve for the speed stick. And now what I want to do is I want to identify irregularities that I have compared to other customers that I have, right? So I know I've lost money. Why did I lose money? So if I look at this little quick comparison here, is, I'm trying to make it bigger, is basically, okay, my company average where I spent customer service is 0.6%, right? But with this specific product and customer, I actually had 7% of my cost that I spent on it. So that means I had some type of extra or additional customer service that I delivered, and therefore that's one of the reasons why my cost or my cost to serve are running out of whack, and it's one of the reasons why I lost some money on that customer, right? So now what I can do, I identify the problem, right? I can go in there and take some action. So, okay, what happened? What happened to the customer service, right? It was a good example of, not spending your time on copy pasting data and really analyzing the data. What happened? Where are some irregularities? And where do we need to make some improvements, right? And not 3 months later, but for next month, for next week. All right, so this whole concept of cost to serve, I think is a very, very important one, also for manufacturing, not just for distribution companies, but also for manufacturing companies, right? Another example I want to show you guys is this visualization of a plant analysis. So this is an example of where I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants, and we see here a little bit of a cost overview of warehouse handling costs. This is all brought down to warehousing cost per case. So if I look over here at the one plant of Fargo, here's my net sales, my SG&A, my distribution costs, my picking, my packing, my receiving costs, right? And I can easily identify with these red or green conditional formats, okay, where am I doing well, where am I running out of whack, right? So the ability to drill down to this level to say, hey, which exact orders or which exact customers that I serve and where did they perform well, where did they not perform well is very, very important. And visualizing those, of course, gives you a good, a quicker way of finding those, right? Another example of visualization that I want to share with you guys is this dashboard over here. We call it the Walmart dashboard. This is just a dashboard of the vendor analysis. So if I open this up, I see, hey, these are the vendors. Here are all my brands or equipment that I've sold. These are all my actual actual invoices that I've gotten, and what was my sales, my gross profit, my SG&A expenses, etc., my contribution margin. And if you look on the bottom, I can clearly see here, okay, where is my gross profit compared to my contribution margin, right? So if you look at this, violet line compared to the green line, the difference between is the gross profit compared to the contribution margin, right? So a very nice way of visualizing things and seeing, okay, which vendors am I maybe making some money, but which vendors do I have the best contribution margin with, right? So these are just all good examples of this cost to serve. And again, it's all about, okay, what does it really cost me to serve my customer? All right, having said that, I want to show one last example here, what we call a P&L simulation engine. This is a very important concept, very good concept, because this is exactly the difference between a transactional system and an analytical system, right? Transactional systems are made to transact. This platform, the analytical system, is made to perform analytical analysis to help you make better decisions. It also means we have the capability to create these what-if simulations, right? Which I think most of you will agree is very, very difficult to do this in a transactional system. So if we look at here the baseline, this is the base P&L line, right? This is mostly can be a standard, it can be a plan, a forecast, or maybe just one actual period, it doesn't matter. And then I want to have, make certain changes maybe to my revenues or to my cost of goods sold, or even to my transportation costs, whatever it might be, and I want to compare these scenarios, right? So if I can go and say my base scenario is my cost of goods sold 2017 standard, but my what-if scenario is, for example, my cost of goods sold with a raw material price increase, right? If I just reinstate this P&L here, I can directly see, hey, this would be my impact just on making a change to my cost of goods sold. Well, okay, that's fine, but doesn't really drill me down to the drivers as we talked about earlier, right? So let's drill down a little bit further. If we look at this area of cost of goods sold, I can directly see, hey, my scenario cost of goods sold, raw material price increase, is I increased my raw material prices, everything that contained copper, by 15%, right? So what happens is I see no change in, if I look at this here is an overview of all my finished good materials. I had no change in my BOM structures. I had no change in my routings. I had no change in my work center rates or cost centers. I only made a change where I increased copper. And so what our system does, it dynamically goes through all of the bill of materials, all levels of the bill of materials, identifies where is copper used, and then calculates this what-if scenario. Right? And I see here what is my variance, what is my percentage variance. So I see just for increasing, if raw material prices go up 15% for copper, this is the financial impact that would have on each of my finished good items, right? On a very low level, but what do we want to do? At the end of the day, we want to bring it back to this P&L level and say, overall, based on my my demand and my sales plan, this is going to be my revenue, but if my prices go up, I'm actually going to, it's going to cost me $97,000 or $97 less than $97,000 more, right? So very simplistic model, but the ability to drill down and make changes in the weeds and on your bonds or on a price level, rerun your entire financial results, and then see what is the exact difference in what area of your P&L. I think it's a very, very important concept, and that's really one of the most valuable contributions when you think about the journey from coming from product costing, having all this detailed product costing work, all the way to the cost to serve, right? Being able to allocate certain actions and certain expenses that you have to specific customers based on drivers. Right? Having said that, I'm being flagged down very badly, because I can talk about this all day, and I would like to talk about this all day with you, and hopefully I get a chance to talk about this all day with you in person one day. So I was told to go back to the PowerPoint and talk about some key takeaways, or also any specific questions that you guys might have right now. So just keep typing some of your questions if you have them. I'd love to answer them. In the meantime, while you're typing your questions, I'm going to go with some of the key takeaways that I want to share with you and want to send you away with. So one of the key takeaways is that finance is the business partner to turn where you really have the functionalities and the capabilities to bring data that you have, combine it with your business logic that you have, combine it with the current situation that you have, and then find the best answer in a good financial analytical platform such as our software, right? So there's a great opportunity. Another takeaway is use cost drivers to identify and exploit your company's advantage across the value chain. Meaning, are you a cost advantage, a cost-driven company? Are you a brand-driven or a product-driven company? What is the strategy that you follow in order to become more profitable, and how does it apply to your financial analytical platform? Another one is, you really want to eliminate those silos and bring data together where it makes sense. And our software provides a great platform for that. Bring the calculation relevant data all in one place. Let the system do the calculations that you need to be doing, and provide you the answers to make better decisions or guide decisions that you need to make for your business, right? The last takeaway is get the right combination of robustness and flexibility in your systems to power your financial analytics program. Meaning, ERPs are made to transact. Let people do the transactional work, and use an analytical system where your business logic is applied in order for you to come up with these more guiding and better decisions at the right time. Any questions so far?
So we're still waiting for people to enter stuff in the chat, but while we're waiting for that, I'll just throw a question out at you.
Yeah.
For one from the Peanut Gallery. Maybe you can talk, since you speak with finance leaders all the time, maybe you can talk a little bit about, what are some of the simulations or analytics things that people are really asking for? I know you talked a little bit about raw material price changes and stuff like that, but what are the real sort of nuts and bolts things that people are asking for now when it comes to analytics?
Yeah, I mean, the notion of what if simulation is really a big one. It's not good enough anymore to say, if the CFO walks in the office and say, hey, what would this do if we losing a customer is one of the examples, right? If we lose this one customer, what would this do to our P&L? It's not good enough anymore to say, okay, give me a week, right? I need to figure it out. I need to copy and paste a bunch of data in a bunch of Excel spreadsheets, get a bunch of input from other people. That's just taking too long, and the opportunity or the threat might be too late to either take it or to avoid it. Winning and losing customer is a good one. We get a lot of questions around product costing of raw material price simulations. What happens if prices go up, especially in a vulnerable business environment such as metals or chemicals, etc. Another one is also what about capacity planning? When you think about shifting, but what if we shift some of the volume from one plant to another plant, where we might be able to have some capacity restraints? That's another good what if simulation scenario. Or a very holistic one is, right, what if we build a new plant, right? Would this, in 5 years, would it pay off, right, based on the product mix that we currently have? Do we need additional demand for it? These are all these real-time business decisions that our customers are asked to make, and we certainly help them to answer those.
Cool. Well, I guess you were amazing because you've answered all the questions before they were even asked today.
Okay. Okay, that's great to hear, especially from Stacy. And I would like to thank you guys, and I would like to connect with you guys, be it via LinkedIn, be it via email, hopefully at some point in person, right? For you guys to know me, I'm actually a fun guy to hang out with, fun guy to talk to. So call me, email me. Would love to meet you, and thank you guys very much for your time today.